getting higher and higher for her first news conference and her first interview. That's tomorrow.
Hello, I'm Chris Cuomo, and thank you for joining me here on NewsNation. So, the big question, do you want to know the state of the presidential race? Of course you do, but there's so much hype on the partisan platforms. Polls, we all know now that there's just snapshots, right? Just snapshots. You got dueling rallies, reporting about resonance online, and that, as you know by now, is mostly magical thinking, right? That's why headlines and screens are about vibes and how each side feels. Kamala joyful or adjusting. Trump unsettled. Now, there are two reasons for this. One is a serious one. We have no policy ideas to digest, to work on. Harris hasn't put them up or defended yet. That may start changing tomorrow. At least she'll have to start defending what Biden has done. And Trump just says, the other side has horrible policies. I have great ones. Both sides are all about how the other is a worse person and a more frightening proposition is a danger. And look, let's be frank. It works. But I'm going to offer you something different because I actually did want to know the state of the race. Rallies and reflections of the moment don't show momentum. Registrations do. Who is registering to vote, where, and for whom? Here's the real data from July. Show them, my friend. And we see some obvious things, okay? We see red outpacing blue. All right, I'll take you through this as kind of a panorama, and then I'll show you the totals, all right? But you'll see red outpacing blue, okay? Swing states, I have a graphic for you, right? Pulling out just the swing states in July. Troubling picture. This was even more alarming in July for the House seats, which is why Democrats pushed Biden to exit. Now, at this point, as critical thinkers, you're saying, wait a minute, you just said July, here are the totals. Yeah, look at the Republicans. Holy cow, 252 to 19. Yeah, but this was in July. Harris wasn't even in yet. This doesn't matter. Yes and no. July was the peak month for former President Trump after the assassination attempt at the RNC, the huge moment he had to pivot, to change, to be who the country needs him to be. He chose not to. He chose to stay on the road of division. Will it work? I don't know. But it shows you at first the hand that Harris was dealt. This is how she entered. And we do have data since she entered. In two states that I think are really interesting, Pennsylvania, swing state, you got to know that, and North Carolina, because it's a can't-win state for the Democrats, or so we believe. Now, when you look at those two states, since Harris got in, voter registrations, you see a shift. You see a shift. Let's show that to them, huh? Come on down here. Watch me strutting my tight pants, because I'm getting heavy, baby. Now, so is the situation. We see that there is a shift. There is a legitimacy to understanding that Harris has made a positive difference. How do we know? We know because of this. Here's where it is, the week of Biden's dropout. You see the registration swing in these two states. And remember, can't win in North Carolina is the presumption. Can't win. And yet you see a bump. So what does that show? So there are a couple of things going on. One, you got to give respect to the Republicans because they've been working their ground game, and that's what drives registrations, okay? You got to motivate people to get out and register. Even more so, you have to redouble, triple your efforts to get them to vote. Way easier to get them to register than to vote. Now, here's the part that I care about the most. Let's walk again because I know how you love to work that steady cam. Look at him. He's nervous with the little baby steps moving backwards. All right, now here's the one metric that people aren't talking about that's really the only one that matters to me. In fact, I'll make you a bet. If you can find me a major media outlet that is focused on what I'm about to in this data, because we all have it, I'll send you this mug, okay? I want to focus on the gray. The gray. The people registering as neither Democrat nor Republican. Now, first of all, in July, the gray outpaced either other one in a lot of major areas. The gray outpaces. Now, why don't they focus on it the way we are now? Because most outlets are about the party game, and here we expose it, not play it. This shift makes sense to me, even in 1 month. Why? because we already know the fastest growing of our voter base is non-left or right, but people like you in search of reasonable. We are already a plurality, over 40%. Now, 40% is not a majority, but we could be on the way there. It's the fastest growing part. At least that's my hope. Since November 2020, guess what percentage of new voter registrations are independent or not Republican or Democrat, right? Because you could be Green Party, you could be Working Families Party, you could be different things, but you're not Republican or Democrat. It's an affirmative move away from those two parties. Guess what percentage since 2020, November, which is, of course, when we had the last presidential election? 82%. Pretty easy to guess when I put up the answer. But that's the point. Why so many? Frustration with a failed two-party system. Independents like you are the future. And it makes sense. Americans should be averse to hollow conformity, and that's what the parties are at this place, right? And at this place of where we are right now in our country, that's all they are. Are you afraid enough to join us? Americans are not sheeple. The parties have been terrible in how they seek office, and certainly in what they do with it. So that's the data of a month that shows Trump's momentum, how it manifested, and what really matters, which is voter registration, what happened once Harris came in, and what is the real story, which is the untold truth. Remember, there's a great quote about news. News is what the powerful want to keep hidden. Everything else is propaganda. So the truth of the data is independents are on the rise. So what does the rise of the independent voters actually mean in November? What does this data mean to a better mind? NewsNation political editor, the host of The Hill Sunday, Chris Stirewalt. It's good to see you, young man.
Hello, my friend.
So did I get anything grotesquely wrong?
Well, look, I think you have the broad strokes exactly right in this sense. Democrats were defeated, felt defeated. They were down. Republicans felt good. And the brand, so if it's Coke and Pepsi or Ford and Chevy or whatever, Miller or Bud, the red team, the people who bought the red brand, were feeling very good, and they were probably, some of them, coming out of being independent. Some of them maybe had been independent, but they said, you know what, I feel good about the red brand. I'm going to tell my friends and neighbors to come back in. Felt solid. Democrats didn't feel good. Playing defense is always bad. When you're the party in power, it's very hard to keep your coalition together because people expect things from you that you can't deliver. So they gripe and they complain and they grouse and they say, well, you should have been more like this. You should have been more like that. Democrats stagnant. And then you show those numbers from Pennsylvania and North Carolina, and you see those changes over the course of 4 years where Republicans are winning in those 25 states. Then you flip it. Harris comes in and Democrats all of a sudden feel good again, and they feel optimistic and hopeful and maybe like they're the change party, and you see their registration numbers go up, 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 up.
So when you look at this and you think through the lens of how the two sides see the data, when they hear this, you know that Republicans have to say, well, good, even though we shut all those field offices down at the RNC and who knows where the money's going, they are getting people to register, or something is. On the Democratic side of the ball, they see that the change, here's another manifestation, that the change seems to have helped us. Now, the problem is the expression, what got you here won't get you where you want to be. Why does Kamala Harris's team believe that right now? Momentum's going to end. Yeah, but it hasn't. Why would I do anything different and hasten that process? What's your read?
You run it till the wheels fall off, right? I know why Kamala Harris owes the American people sit-down, grown-up interview with a real journalist who will ask tough questions. I know why the American people deserve for the frontrunner to be the next president of the United States to do a full-dress press conference. I know why that's true, and I know why that's right. But I also know that if I was advising Kamala Harris, I would say, you keep this sucker running. You keep this going. If we can run on vibes and be a blank slate, 2/3 of the American people told us for 2 years, someone else, Please give us someone else other than Trump and Biden and Trump. Give us someone else. And now they have her, and they're liking her, and the vibes are going. So if from a practical application of politics, if she can make it to the convention without the risks that are attendant to giving a grown-up serious interview to somebody or doing a real hour-long press conference, I'm sure she's going to do it.
Chris Stirewalt, I love you and thank you.
Thank you, my friend.
All right. Now, look, Chris is exactly right. And I hate it. Not just because I'm jealous of him because he's smarter and has a better future in front of him, but because I want her to give the interview. I like Elon Musk's potential. Donald Trump talking to him for an hour and 45 minutes or whatever it is, you can call it a conversation. I like conversations, but that's home team. He's talking to one of his biggest supporters, okay? They should be going to uncomfortable spaces so that they can show you that they are better than that they can rise. Harris shouldn't take the easy way, nor should Trump. And you should see if either or both continue to do so. Now, who's going to make a difference? Kamala Harris believes, not unlike the Obama campaign, not unlike Bill Clinton in 1992, that you got to get the emerging generation of voters. Here, now, that is Gen Z. That is going to be the first time this generation really gets to have a big footprint on this race, if they so choose. What works with what team when we look at this generation? Let's bring in the president of College Republicans of America, Will Donahue, and the national director of communications for the College Democrats of America, Sohali Badullah. It's good to have you both.
Thanks for having me on, Chris.
Sohali, how did I do on the name, by the way?
Hey, you did great. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, you know, another Italian name, it's always easy for me to say. Just kidding. All right, so Sohali, I start with you. One, why do you believe that your generation is going to vote Democratic, if at all, in this election? Why?
That's an easy question. I think Vice President Harris and the Democratic Party represents a lot of the values of young Americans. We really just want a future in which we have a decently well economy, where we have our rights to us, such as reproductive rights, and in which climate action is being taken care of so that future generations can enjoy our wonderful planet for many generations to come. And one in which things like gun violence is not a problem for us, so that we can go out to school and be safe in our own communities.
And you think that gets them to the polls more than the economy for the jobs that their degree may or may not afford them? What is being done with their debt? What the chance is that they'll ever have to buy a home like the one their parents have?
I think so, especially because, this election is so much more about than just simply issues. Right? It's about the values of what this administration will represent to young Americans, right? We care about democracy. We care about elections, fair elections, and the ability for us to vote and our systems to be one in which we don't let people like Donald Trump get away with the crimes that he's committed. And I think a lot of young Americans have that moral clarity to be able to see which party is doing what is right for them.
You know, Will, it's an interesting phrase that your colleague uses. Of what you fear, what you're against, what you want to correct. That is certainly motivation on the right as well. Is that echoed in your generation? Do people who are thinking about either voting for former President Trump or consider themselves conservative or Republicans, do you see them being motivated by what they want to stop, what they are against?
I don't, for the most part, Chris, and thank you for having me on. I was raised in a Democrat household. My parents voted for Obama both elections. I went into college a liberal, and as a first-generation immigrant, by all the statistics, I should be president of college Democrats, not college Republicans. But one thing rang true after the Trump presidency, and that was the economy is doing terrible. And I think polling, at least in the beginning for Vice President Harris and for President Biden, is starting to show that. In Pennsylvania, our NYT and Siena polls are showing a 28-point swing in the 18 to 29 voter demographic. I think the social issues are obviously important to our generation that leans liberal, but in an economy where we're not going to be able to afford a home and groceries are up 25% and gas is up over 50%, these are just things that matter more to us. We're trying to start families. We're trying to have the American dream passed down to us, and we don't see that future.
It's easy. You see the graph that we have on the screen right now that has you guys oversampled Democratic. Now, the question becomes why. Will, I'll start with you. Why do you believe Gen Z oversamples Democratic? Do you think it's what you started with, which is that when you're young, you're left? What's the old expression? If you're young and not a Democrat, you have no heart. If you're old and not a Republican, you have no head. What is your take on that? Do you believe that the oversampling, Will, to the left is because they're just young people, or do you think there's something that's grabbing them?
I think you're exactly right, Chris. There's a lot of young, people in college, people not in college that have ideas about how they want to live their lives, how they want to approach the world. And when we're younger, we're not turned off by, taxes, and we're not turned off by a job market and the evils of the world. And so we come at life from a very utopian point of view. We think we can hand out cash to those that are less fortunate than us. We think we can bring in everybody across our border and that we're not going to have repercussions. And the fact of the matter is that's just not true. You leave college and you join the workforce and you realize that there are bills to pay, and we can't approach everything in life with a handout. And so I think you're right. Young, Gen Z students, non-students are very, very loving, and they want to help people. And so they trend liberal. And then when they get out into the market and they can't afford a home, it's like, oh, wow, maybe I probably shouldn't have voted for Biden.
You certainly have been loved up, Sahali. I know that because you've got great parents. And I know because I'm one of them. And we have loved you guys up the way that we wanted to be loved up when we were young latchkey kids. So, Sahali, when you look at this election, what do you anticipate among your generation of first-time voters in most cases? Do you believe that we're going to see a record? Do you think we're going to see overperformance? Or do you think this is an election that a lot of people are turned off by and will stay home?
I think we will see record turnout, and I think that the past is just a great indicator of the future. We've seen record turnout in 2020 and 2022 midterms as well, and I think that youth will be the factor that really decides who wins the election. We make up more than half the electorate, or just about half the electorate, and I think that plays a really, really big role in who wins in this November. And so I think the youth vote, like what both campaigns are trying to do to capture our vote, is going to make a really, really big difference in who wins the White House.
I didn't hear you mention reproductive rights, which I'm wondering if that is Kamala Harris's best chance of creating a movement. Why didn't I hear it from you?
You should have heard it from me, because you're right. It is a really, really big issue for college-age students. I think we just want things that represent basic, rights that we want, like freedom. And Republicans, they say that they're the party of less government, but I think that we see that they're actually putting more restrictions on what we can do. And reproductive rights is one that Democrats are really, really pushing out there so that they can win.
So once we get the two teams to put out some policies and we start having something to chew on, will you two please come back? I don't want to, the next time I see you is when you're running for Congress and you're ducking my questions. So I would like you to come back before. So as we have more to chew on, I'd love to get a take on where your guys' heads and hearts are on the issues, okay? Appreciate you setting the table for us.
Thank you, Chris.
Sahali Vidula, Will Donahue, appreciate you both. Thanks. All right, break is 4 minutes and 5 seconds. Coming up, in 2020, election denial was a huge deal, okay? We know that there was an effort to overturn your vote. That's a big legacy hanging around former President Trump's neck. What does it mean this time? Can we see already that we're headed for trouble? There's a report by an independent journalist who says we are headed for trouble, that there are dozens, if not 70, election officials who are primed to refuse to certify the election if Trump loses. And he knows who they are, but can he convince me? Because I'm not as worried as he is. Plus, one of those 2020 election deniers served time in jail for what she did on January 6th, says, guess who she's going to vote for? Kamala Harris. What happened? Next. So, is this election going to be smoother than 2020? Look, I don't know that the actual election and voting wasn't smooth in 2020. It was the lack of acceptance of the vote that was a real problem. And are we headed that way again? There are some signs. Independent journalist named Justin Glau has written a new article for Rolling Stone titled, "These swing state election officials are pro-Trump election deniers." Now, in key battleground swing states, This guy found people through social media who suggest that they are planning to not certify election results in 2024 if Trump loses. He names 70 such officials who he says buy into Trump's election conspiracy theories. Who are they? What is the danger? Justin joins us now. It's good to see you, sir.
Thanks for having me.
So make the best case for why these people represent a concern, because you found 70, but who knows how many there are of like mind and intention.
They represent a concern because not only have they expressed sentiments about election denialism, but for 22 of the people who are on this list, they've already refused to vote to certify election results, which is prior to 2020 been what Democratic lawyer Mark Elias calls like part of the pageantry of democracy. It's just a thing that is done. And for 22 of these folks, they've said, nope, we're not going to certify these results of various elections, not just the 2020 election, but subsequent elections for, local city council people and stuff like that. And they've done so more or less. They're all Republicans who have done it on the basis that, there might be some fraud. So we need to hold up certification.
So while that's kind of poor form at a minimum, they haven't been successful because they're not elected officials. They don't have any real power, and they really, at best, can gum up the works and cause litigation. So, as Alfred E. Newman used to say, you're probably too young to remember him on Mad Magazine, what, me worry? Why should we worry? They can't really do anything.
Well, I think they do have actual power, and they're one of the ways. There's some big ways that they do have actual power. Obviously, certification. They adjudicate ballots. If you send in a mail-in ballot and it's unclear, remember the hanging Chad thing in 2000. These are the people who put together vote review panels that say, who did Chris vote for, Trump or Biden? Right? They can close and open polling precincts, things like that. As far as why worry about certification, and you're right, it is mostly gumming up the works. The reason that I think it is a problem is because when these Republican officials refuse to certify results, they're doing so on the basis that they believe that there is a thing called widespread election fraud, which is not actually a thing. And so what it does is it lends credibility to those claims, which is just going to fire people up on the right even more than they already are, right?
I always tell people, Justin, and you are giving a good example of who refuses to believe it. There was never a show of proof in any of the litigation of fraud. They never, and the outlet that they kept pointing to that would have the proof, would have the affidavits, eventually stood up in court and had to say, we do not have such proof. But it doesn't mean people don't believe it. It doesn't mean they're not ready to act on it. So we need people to watch the watchers. And that's where you come in, Mr. Independent Journalist. Thank you for sharing your reporting. Please come again.
Sure thing. Thanks a lot.
All right. Justin Glau, thank you very much. Great piece. You did a lot of legwork on it. And there's definitely going to be cause for concern. How much? What does it mean? We'll see. Now, I want to bring in a flip on this. Just when you believe nobody can kind of change their mind. Wow. Did this person. Election denier, formerly. 71-year-old grandmother, currently. Pam Hemphill. She was at the Capitol on January 6th. She was arrested, served 2 months in jail. And she has a message for you as voters that may surprise you. Pam joins us now. Nice to meet you, young lady.
Hi, thank you, Chris, for having me on. So
first, Pam, what were you doing there on January 6th? What did you think? You were going to go hang some members of Congress? What were you doing there?
No, I had been invited by my family. It was a Christmas gift to go there right before I was going to have surgery and start my chemotherapy. And I was a citizen journalist from Boise. Everybody knew me in Boise. So my family said, how would you like to go there? It might be Trump's last rally. And I said, oh, that would be fun. It was just to have fun. Just going to be another rally as far as I knew.
And what do you want people to know about your decision to enter the Capitol and to do something that was worthy of arrest in the eyes of officials and even imprisonment?
Well, there's a long story behind what happened, but Actually, I got shoved in the Capitol, and I sat down, and the officers helped me get out. But prior to that, on the steps, these so-called patriots had shoved me up against an officer, stepped on my head, pulled out my shoulder, broke my glasses, cut my knee. And if it wasn't for the Capitol police officers, I would have been dead because I wasn't breathing.
So, Pamela, I'm sorry to hear that. I'm sorry you went through this. And why aren't you so angry at the system for how you were treated when you weren't there to destroy, you weren't there to hurt, you weren't there even really to resist, and you wound up being in prison? Why hasn't that hardened you as a Trumper?
Well, in the beginning, I liked being a victim. I had thousands of letters sent to me calling me a hero. But deep inside, I knew I broke the law. That's all. The DOJ is not weaponized against J6ers. We broke the law. It doesn't matter if it's trespassing, breaking a window, harming an officer. The law is the law. And I knew deep down inside that I had broke the law. See, for me, that day and being there was the worst day of my life. I will forever feel terrible about it. So I speak out to let other people know what I've learned about Trump and my way of making amends.
You go after Trump on social media and you say you support Harris. Do you believe that Donald Trump wanted you guys to do what you did on January 6th?
Absolutely. Him and everybody else. Stephen Bannon, Alex Jones. There's a whole bunch of names I could put out there. But yes, remember what Trump did to the brain. He starts off with fear. They're coming after me, but they're really coming after you. So he hijacks their brain with fear. Then he throws out the love bombing. On January 6th, he said, I love you all, and then the gaslighting, and then the fake news. Don't listen to anybody but me. That's the first sign of a cult leader. But yet you get pulled in because you're not talking to people on the street. I was talking to the lieutenant governor here that were friends with Ammon Bundy. I was with Ammon Bundy for 2 years. I was with the far, far right, and they were all supporting the big lie. And you don't question them, because they gaslight you every time you come to them but give me some evidence. Oh, Pam, the Democrats have been stealing elections forever. Don't listen to them. Just listen to Fox News and Gateway Pundit.
Well, you got to have a broader diet than that. Pamela Hemphill, I really appreciate your candor, and you are welcome here at NewsNation.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate you.
All right, we'll speak again. I want to get your take on the state of the race once we get into it. Thank you very much for coming on tonight.
Thank you.
What a journey, huh? 4 minutes, 30 seconds. Up next, there's a dirty word in politics. If you use it, man, you are asking for people not to vote for you. All right? It's not a 4-letter word, but it might as well be. Tim Walz has used it. What is the word? And if Democrats use it, they are begging to lose. Plus, new claims about why the Secret Service detail that was supposed to protect Donald Trump was so off their game. There's a new report that takes us through a list of errors and flaws that is literally shocking. A man who's been on the inside gives you his take of what we now know.
They're frustrated. They feel like they got left behind sometimes, but we can get out there, reach out, make the case. And for one thing, don't ever shy away from our progressive values. One person's socialism is another person's neighborliness.
Ooh. VP candidate Tim Walz just said it. Might as well scream Voldemort at Hogwarts. Socialism is the boogeyman du jour for the right. Why would he say it? Let's ask progressive YouTuber Brian Tyler Cohen. He's got more than 2 billion views on social media, and he deserves it. Now, his answer to my question about why is likely going to echo the title of his new book, Shameless. BTC. Brian Tyler Cohen joins me now. Good to see you, young man.
Chris, so good to see you. Thanks so much for having me on.
Congratulations on the book. You are a thought leader on the left for sure, and you are not impressed by the boogeyman that is socialism. But I will say, it brings nothing but agita. Why would Walz even bring it up?
I think it's a testament to the fact. I think what he's trying to do here is prove that while Republicans wield this term as, again, some boogeyman over and over and over in election after election, that what he's actually talking about, the policies that he's actually defending, are anything but scary. He said what he sees as what somebody else calls socialism is his just neighborliness. Look, Tim Walz is probably best known for signing legislation that would guarantee students hot breakfasts and lunches in schools. Is that scary? Is that the big boogeyman that they're talking about? And beyond that, just look at Democratic policies without talking about some nebulous idea of socialism. Look at the actual policies that were passed. The infrastructure law, most of which benefits rural America. Rural broadband overwhelmingly benefits red America. The PACT Act to make sure that veterans have health care. The CHIPS Act to lead to a boom in manufacturing in this country. The American Rescue Plan, which saved the economy after COVID and led the U.S. to the strongest economy in the entire world. So on the actual policies that Democrats espouse, which part of that is actually scary?
You know what the battle is, though, Brian? They got to make the case as well as you just did. And if they don't, and they don't do it with the same frequency and vigor that you make your case, then they get defined by the people who talk about them. Why should I read your book?
Here's what I would say. I think the book is important. Let me just finish one more point that I think actually lends itself to this idea that the use of the word socialism is actually not that scary. Republicans have been crying socialism for years and years and years. They said that Barack Obama would usher in socialism, Bill Clinton would usher in socialism. We had 8 years of Bill Clinton. Are we a socialist country? We had 8 years of Barack Obama. Are we a socialist country? We had 4 years of Joe Biden. We're still not a socialist country. So at what point does the socialism actually kick in? Because we've had Democrats elected despite these constant claims of socialism, and we're all fine. We're still here. We are still a capitalist country, the strongest capitalist country in the entire world. So all this goes to show is that we shouldn't be afraid of the word socialism, because what they're doing is just introducing a straw man.
Well, but it is a strong man for them because it is seen as anathema to capitalism and democracy. That it's about killing competition. It's about giving handouts. It's about taking private sector out of healthcare. It's about redistribution of wealth through taxation. Now, you see those all as dog whistles. And in your book, you say it's part of a kind of plan of trying to break the system. Tell me quickly.
Yeah, so I think what Republicans are looking to do is, and I title the book, The Republicans' Deliberate Dysfunction, what they're trying to do is break government so they can then point to the government that they just broke as proof that it can't work. And so what should Americans do? Because government can't work, elect people who think that it should be shrunk down to nothing. And that is, of course, them. So it's this vicious cycle where they just keep breaking the thing that they're put in charge of, and then they use that evidence as a proof point for people to elect more Republicans who will continue to shrink it down.
Brian Tyler Cohen, appreciate your perspective. You're always welcome here. Thank you very much, and good luck with the new book.
Thanks.
I got my own copy right here. I didn't sign it because it's too much of a big shot. Shameless. This is a good read. Good time to be feeding your brain. Brian, good luck with it. All right,
Chris,
now,
thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. We got more information for you about the Secret Service detail that was supposed to be protecting Donald Trump, okay? Now, there is a report that has a serious set of allegations in it about what was going wrong with that detail before it ever came to that day in Pennsylvania. And just some of the stuff, allegations, of what kind of relationships the people were having, sexual ones, bullying, how they were treating each other, that basically this was like a time bomb. How much is true? What does it mean? Secret Service agent Paul Eckloff protected 3 presidents, including Trump. Now, I had 3 other cats, 2 men and 1 woman who did the job, who said to me they've never heard of anything like this going on as long as it did on this detail, as summed up in the report. And I said, well, maybe it's just the only time you've ever seen it reported on. They said, well, maybe, but I've still never heard anything like this. What's your take?
Well, I think I took away from it a lot different from what other people did. We did see in this report some toxic activity, some workplace bullying, but anybody who knows law enforcement knows that they eat their own. Bullying is almost their love language. In this case, there was some toxicity. There were investigations and nothing was borne out. But I want people to realize that when you really read these reports, you see these two leaders that were speaking to their team. And this is teamwork at the highest level. These two men, both of whom I've worked with at the president's detail, are honorable men of integrity and are trying to mentor these younger agents to stop these behaviors and build this better team. Like we saw at the Olympics, whether it's Noah Lyles on the track, Simone Biles, on the floor, LeBron James in the paint. The Secret Service is America's team. And these are deadly stakes. It's not every 4 years, and it's not for medals. It's for life and death. A father lost his life. A president was nearly killed. And this teamwork, this insider view of what it takes to discipline the people who are on post and fighting for us every day, it's quite fascinating.
Is it also part of the explanation of how it happened, that this was just not a well-oiled machine, as opposed to this being some kind of deep state conspiracy to take out a former president?
Well, I think what it reveals is that the failures of July 13th were myriad. They are local police, they are Secret Service failures, but they are most of all human failures. And what you saw with this latest report is a chain of human failures, or the human factors that you have in any workplace. You just don't see them exposed on a national level with these national security and life and death stakes. I don't believe that they're directly related. I think law enforcement, the Secret Service, any workplace environment is plagued sometimes with workplace bullying and toxic environments, or psychological safety of its employees. But you're seeing it writ large. You're seeing a microscope on the Secret Service. But what we are witnessing is these two leaders who are, as I said, leading these people in one of the most important games on the planet.
Paul Eckloff, your perspective, as always, is valued. And I just saw something that you'll learn to pick up on at home as well. You see how Paul paused there for a second? That's called the Dusty Interrupt. She was saying rap. This is a break of 3 minutes and 45 seconds. He can protect the president, but nobody's safe from Dusty when it comes to a time cue. All right, Ukraine is doing something that I thought they were not supposed to do, certainly not with American weapons or assets, which is moving into Russia. Supposedly, almost 100,000 people have been displaced there. What does this mean? I have new video for you. Next. All right, we're 2 years in to the Russia invasion of Ukraine. Now, is Ukraine getting the upper hand, or are they just creating a lot of trouble for their friends in the West? There's right now progress a week into the biggest incursion by an enemy into Russia since the end of WW2. Is Putin worried? I don't know. I'll show you some new video at some point during this interview where he's certainly kind of talking up the talk of what's going on. Our assumption has been that Putin is doing the minimum in Ukraine. He's not using his nuclear weapons. He's not using biological weapons because he just wants to show NATO what he could do to destabilize. But what does this mean now? Dan Rice joins us right now, former special advisor to the commander-in-chief of Ukraine's armed forces general, and now the president of American University in Kyiv, still waiting for my speaking invitation, and former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, Mr. William Taylor. Good to have you both. Dan, I thought that they weren't supposed to go past their own boundaries, at least not with American weapons. And Zelensky had always said, no, we just want to keep them off our land. We're not going to go in there. What's happening?
No, I think this is a brilliant maneuver, and it has surprised the world, shocked Russia, and it's a great action by Ukraine. And Ukraine has the authority from the Western powers to use certain weapons and offensive actions within Russia, and they're doing just that. I think the Western leaders need to exploit the initiative. They need to say, yes, we support Ukraine on this maneuver. 2, give them more and more weapons to exploit the initiative. Stop discussing any negotiations and demand that Russia go back to the 1991 borders. That's what this offensive is giving the power of the West to do. We can win this war. Ukraine can win this war. We just have to give them the power and the weapons they need. And Ambassador Taylor, look forward to seeing you in Kyiv shortly.
Oh, so he got the invite. So, Ambassador, what has changed, and why doesn't this raise an equal energy to what Dan was just outlining of apprehension by the United States that now there's going to be escalation? Now Putin has reason to up how he acts because he can say he's the victim.
Chris, everybody knows who's the victim here. Putin invaded Ukraine. That's very clear. And he's had a sanctuary for a long time. He could shoot at Ukrainians from Russian territory and not have any worry about the Ukrainians shooting back until the United States gave them the ability, the Ukrainians the ability and the authority to shoot back. And now they're doing the same thing. They are pushing into Russia to stop the Russians from shooting at Ukraine. And yes, they've made a big change. There are people who will be worried, and the people who are going to be worried are Vladimir Putin.
Ambassador, thank you very much. Dan Rice, we've got to keep the coverage going. Thank you for getting to me on text and letting me know it's time to update the story. This matters. Thank you very much. Appreciate you both.
Please join us anytime, Chris. You're welcome to the American University of Kyiv anytime.
You just say it on TV. I'll never hear from them again. Thank you both. Stay safe. Stay safe, my brothers. Up next, final thought. I have an exercise for us. Don't worry, you're not going to sweat. When Kamala Harris decides to go with the VP or alone and decides to start making the case, don't worry, it's just my staff talking amongst themselves as loud as I am. That's how we do it here at NewsNation. So when they decide to start making the policy arguments to you, right, which is going to happen like any day, I have an exercise for you. There's going to be reams of criticism that come from those policies. And a lot of it will resonate. A lot of it will be reasonable. A lot of it will make sense. However, how much of the criticisms of what Harris or Walz or whomever comes out to make the case for what policies they want on, let's say, on the economy, which I think is going to be first up, how much of it is matched by what is offered by the other side? And by that, I mean, it is easy. My father used to say, any jackass could kick down a barn, but it takes a good man or woman to build one. Look at what we're about to experience through that lens. It is too easy to tell me what is wrong with what Harris and Walz are going to suggest. I could tell you now. I don't even know what the policies are. And I could tell you what is going to be the obvious weaknesses for them, what will seem like redistribution, what will seem like too much regulation, what will seem like things that are going to stem job growth that Democrats want. Now, maybe I'll be surprised by the policies. Maybe they'll take it in a different direction. Maybe they will start holding small business and workers in their hand and part-time workers in their hand the way they should and take care of them. But how much of it is not just criticized, but matched by policies that are calculated to get us to a better place and explained? That's what you must demand. Don't get suckered